Hey guys, Dave Mazzetti here to talk about text AI workflows. Text AI was originally created to build embeddings indexes for semantic search. It was quickly realized that the process of vectorization was a big job in itself. Pipelines and workflows were introduced to help streamline the process of vectorization. This notebook introduces pipelines and workflows through a series of examples. To get an idea of what a pipeline is, the following list shows a subset of available pipelines. Looking at the list, the summary pipeline works on large blocks of text and distills them down to summaries. The textractor pipeline extracts text from documents such as PDF and Word. The transcription pipeline transcripts text from audio files. And the translation pipeline translates between spoken languages such as English to French. Pipelines are standard callable Python objects. They often, but not always, wrap a machine learning model. When working with large volumes of streaming text, pipelines will often run out of memory. Workflows enter to help with batching and efficiently processing large sets of text. This notebook will cover workflows through a series of examples. All right, the first thing we're going to do here is install Text AI. We're going to install a number of extras which will help with running pipelines and workflows. By default, Text AI has a minimal set of dependencies installed to help get up and running quickly. The full set of Text AI dependencies is over 50 libraries, so it's split up into optional dependencies to help with only installing what you need. We'll also download a set of test data to help with testing. All right, the next thing we're going to do is create pipelines to help with showing how workflows work. The summary pipeline is created first, next textractor, a transcription pipeline, and a translation pipeline. These handles will be stored within this notebook so it can be called later by the workflow. All right, let's create a basic workflow here. You'll see we're importing workflows and tasks. Workflows are a series of tasks, which each task consists of callable elements. Not necessarily a pipeline, but in this case, it will be a pipeline. We'll define a data array of 2 elements just to show how this thing works. The text, the sky is blue, and forest through the trees. And then we'll run it through the workflow and get a list. Workflows will run as generators, so if we're going to force it to consume the list, but you wouldn't want to do this if you were working on large streams of data. It's designed to help with streaming processing. You see the output here is 2 pieces of French text. So just give you a quick overview of what workflows can do. We'll try to create something a little bit more complicated. We're going to create a multi-step workflow. What that means is it's going to be multiple tasks. Tasks are going to be executed sequentially here. The first task we have is a file task, which is going to transcribe audio files, and we're also applying a filter on the inputs. In this case, we're only looking for inputs that end in WAV or WAV files. The next task is going to translate from English to French, as we did previously. This time it's a little different. Instead of text snippets, it's going to be paths to files. In this case, it's going to be audio files. And with the WAV filter, everything here is going to be processed. These are just audio versions of the standard Text AI introduction demo that we did previously. We'll create a workflow as we did before, and it's going to take a series of tasks that we defined up there, and then we're going to run it once again and consume the generator. And as you can see, it's printing out the 6 pieces of text that are all in French. So just to kind of recap what this did, it took a list of files, it transcribed them to text, and then took that text and translated them to French. So as you can see here, it's just printed out. You could have a workflow that just converts data from one format to another, and then you take that list or you consume generator, and that could be all you use a workflow for. Or as we see in the next example, you can actually pass this to an embeddings index to help with semantic search. So we're going to create an embeddings index with a multilingual model and store content, and we're going to create a list of files, same as before, but we're also going to add a PDF file in the mix. This PDF file is an introduction to Text AI. We're going to create workflow tasks here. One thing that's a little bit different is we're actually creating a workflow task. It is a workflow in itself. This task will read in files, extract text, and summarize it. And it's only being applied to inputs with the end in PDF. The next task will read files and transcribe them and only will be applied to WAV files. So looking at the list, the first task is going to only process the first row, and then the remaining rows will be processed by a second task. The outputs of the first two tasks will all be passed to the third task, which translates from English to French, and then everything gets passed to the fourth task, which loads the documents into the embeddings index for indexing. So we'll create a workflow, passing the tasks. This time we'll do it a little differently and actually print as we go along, consuming element by element from the generator, and then print the results. We will take the documents, index them, and then clean up the document store. And as you can see, we're showing all the indexes that are as part of the embeddings index, and then each snippet of text. The first one coming from PDF is read into PDF, extract into text, and then translate into French. And then the other ones, as before, is taking the WAV files, transcribing them, and then getting the text. So let's run a query and see how that works. We'll take the embeddings instance, we'll run a search using French text, climate change, and then we'll print the top result. And as you can see in this case, the search for climate change is going to return the row that talks about icebergs falling off the coast of Canada. So that looks like the best match there. And then the second search is going to search for natural language processing, and it's going to return text AI introduction. So that's going to show the score there and the score there, which gives pretty high level scores for the top results. So up until now, everything's been done in Python. We defined this whole workflow in Python, and that's totally fine if you want to have it integrated that way with your application, if you have a Python stack, or you want to have this level of control and be able to define workflows and you're comfortable in Python. Alternatively, workflows can be defined in YAML, and this is good for if you want to expose it as a web API, or even if you just want to run it as a Python application, but you don't feel like creating all that configuration in Python and you prefer to create it in YAML. That's one way to do it. I think it even gets more powerful though if you want to expose it as a API where any programming language could then hook into this. For example, there's a JavaScript bindings, there's Rust bindings, there's Java bindings, there's Golang bindings for text AI. You could create a workflow and run it through an API, and then those could be called from JavaScript, from Java, even from curl, or you could write your own hook to hook into the API. So we're going to define the exact same workflow that we had previously, but just through YAML. As you can see, we're going to create the embeddings instance with a path to the multilingual model. We'll store content. We'll create a summary pipeline, textractor pipeline, transcription pipeline, translation pipeline, just as before. We'll create the workflow task for summarizing PDFs, just as before. The textractor pipeline is part of that, only being processed to files, and then that's getting passed to the summary pipeline. And then that same workflow is being referenced there and only being applied to PDFs. This transcription pipeline is being applied to WAV files, and then as before, everything's being translated to French and everything's being indexed. And then we're going to create this application instance from TextAI that will load this workflow string. It could also be a path to a file. And then we're going to run a workflow. Once again, as before, it's also working as a generator, so you have to consume the workflow elements in order to print out here. So it's printing out all of the text in French, and that's all been indexed into an embeddings instance. So let's once again do the same thing where we can run a search using the application. You see there's a slight difference here. Instead of embeddings.search, we're running it right through the application. We're still passing the exact same French climate change text, and then we are also printing the top result. And this is the same thing of an iceberg falling off the coast of Canada. And we also have natural language processing, top result being text AI. So just for completeness, we're going to look at this and just see the workflow, and then look above here to remember that, hey, all these same workflow elements were defined in Python. So there's two different ways of doing it, depending on what your use cases are. Both have their merits. Now, looking at everything we introduced here, you can hopefully see the power of workflows and how they could be beneficial both as a standalone task, but also for powering embeddings indexes. This could, examples could be, you could have a standalone workflow that just summarizes and translates, and that could be exposed as an application. You could write an application, instead of indexing, it just returns the translations. You could have a summary service that is a workflow. You could have a transcription service that's a workflow. A whole host of things that could be run. They could be run through Python applications. They could be run through API instances. So goal of this notebook was just to introduce all those concepts. There's about 30 plus notebooks on GitHub that go into more details. There's notebooks that show how workflows can be used to push notifications, how they can be used to train other machine learning models, and there's a number of other examples of what they could be used for. Hopefully this gave you some insights on how workflows could be helpful. See you next time.